Most cricket lovers have their own favourite period, the time they feel that the game was at its best. It usually depends on one's age. True, you'd have to be well into your 90s, even 100 or so, to have seen anything of that grand old man of English cricket, W.G. Grace, here at the nets before the turn of the last century. For today's most senior citizens, their boyhood heroes were probably Frank Woolley and Titch Freeman, Fender or Hobbs, while for those now enjoying their first years of retirement, the golden age began with the start of the 1930s, the days of Wally Hammond, Larwood, Bradman and McCabe. Just take the formidable Australian team which visited England in the summer of 1930.
Morning, everybody. The weather this morning reminds me something of Brisbane instead of good old England. I have now great pleasure in introducing to you the members of the 17th Australian 11. First of all, Mr. Vic Richardson, our vice captain. Mr. Richardson, one of our forcing batsmen and also a brilliant field. He is the captain of the South Australian team and also one of our selectors on this trip. Mr. Kippax, the captain of the New South Wales cricket team. Mr. Ponsford has had wonderful success during the tour, averaging well over 50 in the test matches, and he put up a very, very fine effort in the final test match at the Oval, in which he made 110. Clary Grimmett from South Australia, our slow bowler and whom we consider the best slow bowler in the world today. The next representative, Stan McCabe. Stan McCabe, who has represented us in all 5 test matches, comes from New South Wales, a fine all-rounder, a forcing batsman, a very good field, and is also a very useful medium-pace bowler. The next representative, Bert Oldfield from New South Wales, a wicket-keeper who has shown great brilliance right throughout his career. He has represented us also in the 5 test matches, has kept remarkably well. He is the most experienced man in the side, having been here on 4 tours, I think. Don Bradman from New South Wales. He has broken many existing or previous existing records in the cricket world with the bat on this tour, and he at least must go back to Australia feeling quite satisfied with this, his first tour in the old land. The next representative, Tim Wall. Tim Wall, another South Australian representative, our fast bowler. He is a man who puts everything he can into his bowling, and I can assure you that his efforts show that he has a great heart. That concludes the members of this, the 17th Australian 11.
Bradman was only 22 years old on this, his first visit to England. In the second test at Lord's, the young Dulip Sinji had made over a century for England, but Bradman was to pass that for Australia.
Morris Tate bowling. Not so good. That's the boy again. He just missed that one. White's bowling to Bradman. Bradman batting. Oh, hard luck. We nearly got him then.
Bradman's final score was a rousing 254, but even better was to come later on.
At Australia House, the Australian Test team are given their official reception and meet old friends, among whom are APF Chapman and RES Wyatt chatting to Woodfull. Afterwards, the team have their first net practice at the Alan Fairfax School, Don Bradman, their great bat, gets his eye in. Woodfull bowls, and you don't often see him doing that. Brown, a promising opening batsman. The wily Grimmett bowls to Oldfield, probably the world's best wicket-keeper, and a very useful bat.
Woodfull has won the toss for the first time in this series of tests and has naturally decided to bat first. Chapman and his men are just taking the field. Larwood is opening the bowling to Woodfull. England have never won a test on this ground yet, but it doesn't look like they're going to win this one the way Bradman is batting. Every time he scores something. Hardly a ball gone in this over he hasn't scored from. Bradman has scored his century before lunch. The English team are just taking the field after the luncheon interval. Bradman's 199. That's his 200. Well done.
In this 1930 third test at Leeds, Bradman piled on the runs to reach a record 309 for his first day alone.
The scoreboard reads remarkable at the end of the first day. 458 is the total, out of which Bradman has made 309 not out. It's a world's record.
He went on to a breathtaking total of 334, an England-Australia test match record that stood for another 8 years, until it was broken, as we'll see later, by a young Yorkshire batsman in 1938. This young Yorkshireman was still only in his teens when he made his first test century and his first impact upon the cricket public in this test match against New Zealand at Manchester.
Having won the toss, Robbins decides to bat, and New Zealand discard their sea boots and sou'westers and take the field. Barnett and Hutton open, and the Gloucester Pro soon gets going, but not for long. Jupiter Pluvius takes a hand, and his women and children first in a dash for the pavilion. On resuming, the opening pair presently part company, but with Hardstaff as his partner, the young Yorkshireman Hutton soon reaches his first test century. By this time, old King Sol is performing for a few minutes, and quite a few Lancastrians turn up, but it's only in time to see Hutton caught by Dunning off Vivian. Hardstaff reaches his 50, at 58 he is out, stumped, another Vivian victim. Towards the close, it seems to be a question of, can England win in 3 days, even if their 12th man, the rain, doesn't interfere?
The popularity of cricket goes on increasing, and it is, of course, a matter of satisfaction to us who have had a great deal to do with international cricket and with Lords, to find that the MCC and Lords are still looked to find 11s to visit various parts of the empire where test match cricket is played, and that our visitors regard playing in a match at Lords as their highest ambition.
The next test series between England and Australia took place in the 1932-33 season and was undoubtedly the most controversial in cricket history, especially this third test at Australia's Adelaide ground in January 33. It was the famous, some say infamous, bodyline bowling tour, in which the bowling of Larwood and Voce came under fierce and violent criticism from the Australian team, the Australian public, and eventually the Australian government. In purely technical terms, it seemed nothing to make a fuss about, simply a way of bowling in relation to a concentration of fielders on the leg side. In fact, technically, it was referred to undramatically as leg theory bowling, just another way of bowling and setting a field. But with the rocket speed bowling of Larwood, it became quite something else to think about.
Useful 48 runs. Larwood is trying to tempt him to hit out, and another short-pitched ball rises threateningly.
This leg theory or bodyline bowling has been going on for years. Fred Root, for instance, of Worcestershire, he's bowled this all the time I've known since the war. The difference, as far as I can understand, in this type now, being used by Larwood and Voce, is that they are so much faster off the pitch that the batsmen have to move quicker on their feet to make an effective shot. Now you see the position of the leg theory. The field is actually placed on the leg side as the ordinary bowler bowling the off theory would have his field on the offside.
The bowler's aim is to make the batsman play the ball into the net of fieldsmen clustered on his leg side, who are eagerly awaiting the chance of a catch. Of course, if the batsman is slow, he stands the risk of being hit by the rising ball, as you see now.
The following extract from the 1933 match at Adelaide gives you some idea of what the controversy was all about.
It was a tightly packed ground that saw England take the field for Australia's first innings at Adelaide after having put 341 runs on the board themselves. Fingleton partners Woodfull to the wicket, who opens the scoring with a single off Allen's first ball. There is an early shock for Australia when Fingleton is caught off the second ball of the match. It was at this point in the game that Woodfull was unfortunately struck on the heart by a ball from Larwood which got up. Larwood is faster today than ever, and this slow-motion study reveals his action very clearly. He is in great form and bowls to a leg trap to which Bradman falls a victim when he has only scored 8. Here is a good view of the field set for a leg trap. The umpire scrutinises every delivery of Larwood's for a no ball. Australia are not in a very happy position, and with Woodfull out, after pluckily continuing his innings, 4 wickets are down for 51. None of the Australians seem able to deal with the leg theory bowling, with the exception of Ponsford, who is pulling the game round for his side. Oldfield is now his partner, but the English players are very distressed when he is struck on the head, Larwood again being the unlucky bowler. In consequence of these unfortunate incidents, Larwood is submitted to a good deal of barracking.
Larwood was never selected to play in a test match again.
He is not deterred, however, and O'Reilly is another quick victim. Voce makes a magnificent catch in the slips, which sends Grimmett back for 10. When Ward is bowled,
the Australian innings closes for 222 runs, 119 behind England's total, and England eventually win one of the most sensational cricket matches ever played by 338 runs.
By the time the fifth and final test was played on this tour, England had already won the Ashes.
Hammond hits a 6, and the last stroke has been played in the 1932-33 Test matches.
Although not such a prolific scorer as on the last tour, Hammond has performed big things and was the only player, English or Australian, to score 2 centuries in the present series. Following his 100 in the first innings, Hammond has just made a brilliant 75 not out. And now you are to see 3 other successful members of the English side. Eddie Painter, who headed the batting averages and was mainly responsible for England's grand recovery in the 4th Test at Brisbane. Gubby Allen, second only to Larwood when it came to taking wickets. And now for the villain of the piece, Harold Larwood, known in England as the Nottingham Express. What the Australians call him is nobody's business.
But the Ashes weren't to remain with England for long. Australia revisited England and regained them speedily.
Hello.
John.
Hello, how are
How are you enjoying your trip to England?
Oh, having a great time, thanks.
That's the idea.
Why, how are you? We're just having a wonderful time. The people are treating us so well that we're wondering we don't like going back home hardly enough. It's a wonderful time. But we find we're having a good deal of trouble with the weather. I don't think it's been a good summer. It's been dull, rainy most of the time. In fact, we've only had about 1 decent month all the time we've been here. And that was about the 2nd month after we arrived. Then, of course, with the dull weather, it makes cricket much harder. We're used to a very bright light, middle of summer, the hot weather. And when you get on these dull conditions, it makes it very awkward for you to see the ball. I suppose it's all right when you get used to it, but for a start it's very awkward. And then, of course, the wickets, too, are not too good at the commencement. And being so different to our own, we feel all at sea for a little while, but now we're gradually getting accustomed to them and we're finding our feet a lot better.
I'm looking forward to the time when I can come back again to England, which I'm hoping to do someday, and renew acquaintances with all the many friends I have made on this tour over here.
That's fine. That's fine. Well, the best of luck in the 5th Test match, anyway.
Thanks very much. Well, we're hoping to win, but still, may the best team win, that's all we are.
That's it.
As the opening pair came out to bat at the Oval, the air was alive with the rumour that Hobbs had decided to retire and that this was to be his last Test appearance.
Hobbs playing Fairfax. Played forward to a good length ball on the Midland leg. Hobbs has said this may be his last Test match. Everyone hopes it won't be. That beat him. He played forward to it, but it turned away from him, and it was lucky he had his foot back. Sutcliffe's made 6 in exactly an hour. He played that nice to leg. On the short side, that ball. They got 2 for it. That ought to give the scorers writers cramp.
He's home.
Hobbs is out. Caught short leg in trying to hook a short one from wall.
So ended a career in first-class cricket of almost 30 years.
Jack Hobbs, fated on his retirement from first-class cricket by his star newspaper colleagues and a distinguished company of famous sportsmen, is the recipient of a telegram from His Majesty the King, which, read by Viscount Cobham, refers to
It's a farewell dinner to that great cricketer, Jack Hobbs. It has been a wonderful life,
full of delightful associations, varied experiences, happy memories, enriched by friendships formed at home and beyond the seas. Yet amidst all these pleasant recollections, oft times there is one sad thought: my failure to score my 200th century.
Still, 197's not a bad record, Jack.
When crowds such as these gather in Sydney's Hyde Park, they've got fever, test match fever. And during the MCC tours in Australia, they're able to follow the game ball by ball on huge display boards. When the tours are in England, Australians expect the same service from the radio stations. Since atmospherics are liable to affect reception, cables have been called in to assist radio. It's a very ingenious scheme, as you'll see, for the atmosphere of a broadcast from the ground is retained, although the transmission is made in Australia on minute-to-minute information supplied by cable. There's no time to explain the whole paraphernalia, but there's an effects man to reproduce crowd scenes from a record, and you'll be amused by the use of the commentator's pencil to denote bat meeting ball at the right moment in his commentary.
Ball into Bradman. It's a short ball. Bradman moves back and pulls fiercely past square leg. Hutton running around from deep fine leg has no chance as the ball goes under the ropes for another 4. That's 4 more to Bradman. Barnes turns, runs in, ball into Bradman. This ball well pitched. Bradman moves forward, drives. Compton at cover tries to cut it off, but is beaten by the pace of the ball, and it races away for another 4.
Yes, I've been looking through old films, and it seems that very few bowlers are blameless in their deliveries. I ask you to judge for yourself by means of these shots of famous cricketers, like Larwood, for instance. Or take the case of Allen, and imagine that you're the umpire wearing slow-motion spectacles. Was that a no ball? Is O'Reilly's delivery in accordance with the rules? Watch his foot as the ball leaves his hand. Now, fans, on Saturday we shall be at Lord's to see the Australians playing the MCC and hope to be able to throw more light on the no-ball controversy then. Father Time marks the end of the cricket season and, alas, the end of a great career. At Lord's, Patsy Hendren plays in his last county match and leaves Middlesex almost at the top of the championship. How his familiar figure will be missed on his retirement. I had a word with him at headquarters.
What we all want to know is, Patsy, why a youngster like you is retiring from the game so early.
Well, I thought I'd better give it up before I got a bath chair to take me around.
That's a pretty good reason. Anyway, I'm sure that all your admirers all over the country wish you jolly good luck and a long innings.
Thank you very much.
Portrait of a great sportsman.
The final test, the 5th test against Australia at the Oval in August 1938. The one that no Britons living at the time will ever forget. While the rest of pre-war Europe hunched over their radio sets, wondering what Hitler's next move would be, the English public were glued to their radio sets as Hutton piled on the runs. 1 century, 2 centuries, 3. Would he break Bradman's England-Australia test record? 334 runs of 8 years ago.
First to get his century. Then Leyland, with 100 to his credit, acknowledges the applause. Hutton walks out with Hardstaff on the 3rd day. Of all the records broken in this test, one excites the Oval crowd most, the beating of Bradman's highest ever test score. Here's the historic stroke that does it. Bradman is first to congratulate Hutton. What a day for the 22-year-old Yorkshireman, who goes on to make 364 before being sent back. That's England's total. What else is there to tell, except a word from the hero?
Today, I think, has been one of the happiest days of my cricketing career. I managed to beat Don's great record, and I must say I felt very pleased when I'd achieved it.
And that's really all, for I don't suppose you want to see the 9 Australians' 2 brief innings. As you know, England win by an innings and 579 runs, amid the usual scenes of enthusiasm. But the last laugh is Australia's. They have the Ashes.
And as for those Ashes, well,
they'll have to stay where they are, at any rate for the present.
Indeed, for many years to come. Yet, though many players were later engaged in a different kind of struggle for victory over the next few years, even World War II couldn't put a complete end to cricket at Lord's.
Those present at Lord's included Major Allen, Lieutenant Peter Smith, Major Holmes, Sergeant Major Gover and Sergeant Evans, sportsmen in uniform taking a brief holiday. Here's Flight Lieutenant Ames and Squadron Leader Edrich, DFC, and the two majors. This was August Bank Holiday 1942 at Lord's, where thousands of workers spent a few well-deserved hours of rest watching Middlesex and Essex play Kent and Surrey. Allen bowling to Fishlock. Nichols bowling to Ames, who made 34. Nichols gets a wicket, Parker's. Young Bailey of Essex, fresh from school bowling. He took 4 for 36, 3 of them in his first over. Evans of Kent batting and reaching his half-century. Uniforms take a holiday, and the spectators are much more alarmed by a few spots of rain than they used to be by an air raid siren. Americans in the crowd were no doubt completely mystified by the whole thing.
There you are, boys. There's the good old English game of cricket. Oh, it's been very interesting. Thanks a lot. But why not come out and see some of our good American baseball? How about that, George?
Sure, I think it's a fine idea.
Thank you very much.
Sergeant Instructor Dennis Compton was escorted by his brother Leslie for his wedding with Miss Doris Rich at St. John's Wood Church near Lord's. It was a most joyous occasion, of course, and all his friends and fans will certainly want to wish the famous cricketer and footballer and his wife all the very best.
After the war, one of the first blessings of peace for English cricket lovers was the resumption of test matches, first against India in England in 1946.
Those who think cricket is dead would have been surprised to see how many people wanted to see the test at Lord's. 30,000 got in, but thousands didn't. The Nawab won the toss and decided to bat on a drying wicket. The tourists had been doing well against the counties, but an English newcomer to test cricket, Alec Bedser of Surrey, was right on top and created something of a sensation by taking 7 for 49. One of his victims was the Indian skipper, who was brilliantly snapped up by Aiken at short leg. A great thrill for every single member of the crowd. Top scorer was Modi, youngest player in the match, who carried his bat for 57. Funny, isn't it, the way you get all types watching cricket? She's obviously a born gate crasher. The Indians were all out for 200, but their tail had definitely wagged. They too had a bowler in tip-top form, Armanath, who started rattling England out and was on the verge of a hat-trick when Wally Hammond came in to stop the rot. The Indians, however, were on their toes all the time, and they were a delight to watch in the field. Hardstaff was the hero of England's first knock. Defying Armanath and the rest of the attack, he scored 205 not out. And when he passed his 200, the crowd fairly rose to the occasion. England's first innings gave them a lead of 228, a strong position leading to victory by 10 wickets. The Surrey centenary match at the Oval produced a galaxy of one-time Test match stars in the Old England side. Back row, left to right, Hobbs, Holmes, Allen, Tate, Brooks, Sandham, Strudwick. Centre, Woolley, Sutcliffe, Fender, Jardine, Hendren, and Knighton Freeman. As umpires, Hobbs and Strudwick were playing most unusual parts. Accustomed as they were for so many years to the old gasworks, they used to see them from far more active positions in the field. Maurice Tate, now apparently well qualified as a non-bender, proved that he can still bowl a bit. So did Titch Freeman, who was even more successful, taking 1 for 58. Patsy Hendren, that brilliant deep field, was always right on his toes. Well, nearly always. The King attended this great cricket occasion and the teams were presented. His Majesty had quite a long chat with Jack Hobbs, whom he'd often watched in those pre-war century-making days. Surrey having declared at 248 for 6, Old England went in, and Frank Woolley, at almost 59, the veteran of a side averaging about 50, made a stylish 62. Patsy was all out for a century. He always used to be, of course, but it's not quite so simple when you're 57 years old. He passed the halfway mark and went on batting for a total of nearly 3 hours and 94 runs. Douglas Jardine, still wearing the familiar Harlequin cap, was also in great form. He used to deal firmly with Australia, now he dealt firmly with Surrey and scored 54. But Old England couldn't quite make it, reaching 232 for 5 at close of play. When they all came in, Hobbs was the chief victim of the autograph fiends, but then he always was.
The Bedser twins have provided an unusual cricket story. This is Alec, who bowled so well against the Indians and was chosen to go to Australia to help to recover the Ashes. At first, his selection seemed to imply separation from his twin brother, a serious matter because they'd always been together even through the war. Then it was announced that Eric would be going out to watch his brother play thanks to a wealthy Surrey supporter. This is Eric, not Alec. Or is it? Anyway, here he is with his colleague Eddie Watts to say how pleased he is to be following his brother.
Well, I'm going to Australia after all. I'd almost given up hope, but thanks to Mr. Cope's most generous offer, I shall be able to make it. As you know, my brother and I have never been separated, even during our war service, and I'm sure he was as delighted as I was to hear that I would be in Australia with him this winter.
In the summer of 1947, the South African team visited England, and attendances reached levels never again achieved in this country.
After the interest aroused by the South Africans' great batting at Nottingham, it was natural that large crowds should turn up at Lord's. So large, in fact, that about 10,000 people had to be turned away. Over 28,000, however, had got in when Yardley won the toss from Melville and decided to bat. Hutton and Washbrook, who had opened, were both out soon after lunch. Edrich had a narrow squeak at 46. But he went on to the verge of a century, although the last run was a wee bit tricky. Still, he got it in the end. England's task was made more difficult by South Africa's brilliant fielding and the placing of the field, which made every run extremely difficult to get. By lunchtime on the second day, Compton and Edrich each had over 150. Together, the Middlesex twins put on 370 in a record stand. Here's Compton's 200. Bedser was bowled by Tuckett, Yardley declared. With 554 for 8 on the board, England had every reason to be pleased as they took the field. But when Melville and Mitchell opened for the tourists, it was soon clear that the English bowlers had a stiff job ahead. Mitchell was as imperturbable as ever.
and Melville was his usual brilliant self. Yardley tried everything. Neither Edrich, who had opened the bowling, nor Bedser had any success. Nor did Wright, back in the England side again. Nor Pope, bowling a perfect length as always. Nor Hollies. Mitchell finally fell to Compton, but Melville went on. As at Nottingham, he played a captain's innings. South Africa, undaunted by England's score, continued to play the sort of cricket which we've all come to expect from this very attractive touring team. The royal family arrived, and play was held up while the teams were presented. It was a breezy day. The King and Queen had a long talk with Bill Edrich, whose brilliance with bat and ball was one of the features of the match, and with his teammate and partner in crime, Dennis Compton. Holidaymakers at Hastings had a thrill when brilliant young Dennis Compton neared his 17th century this summer to beat the record Jack Hobbs set up 22 years ago. When he swept the ball from man round to the leg boundary, the great feat was achieved.
No one living through the summer of 1947 in England will ever forget it. Endless days of brilliant sunshine and cloudless skies. No supporter of Middlesex will ever forget it either. The summer of Compton and Edrich breaking records galore, and the winning of the county championship from Yorkshire.
Middlesex take the field at Lord's in their match against Lancashire. Already they had clinched their place at the top of the county list after a season of particular interest owing to their exciting struggle with Gloucestershire for championship honours. There was a bit of a party at Lord's after the first day against Lancs, and all the Middlesex cricketers were naturally feeling pretty good, having achieved their ambition as a team. Dennis Compton, the century maker, chats with Bill Edrich, that brilliant all-rounder. Both were as pleased as Robbins, their captain, who had this to say about it.
Well, here we are. This is the side that's done it. For the first time since 1921, we've won the championship, and nobody could be more pleased than myself that we've at last done it after being 5 years second. People in the north of England, well, in fact, cricketers all over the world might be interested in this telegram that I've received from Yorkshire, especially you fellows here. It goes like this: at last you've done it. You'll find it harder to keep there. Remember, we've only lent you the championship for the time being. Signed, ex-champs.
Enter Don Bradman, who got a great ovation. Then a special cheer on the field. Hollies bowling and Don playing perhaps his last test innings here. The second bowler, Googly, got him. Well, it isn't often you get a big hand when you make a duck, but this was different.
As a boy, Bradman used to throw a golf ball at a curved brick stand below a water tank at home and try to hit it with a small cricket stump at whatever its unexpected angle of rebound. No easy task, he described it later. That must be the understatement of the age. It certainly helped to produce one of the finest batsmen of all time. A benefit was held for Dennis Compton at Highbury. Compton not only played cricket, but was a footballer for Arsenal too.
Dennis Compton of Middlesex and Arsenal goes out to bat for his football club against his cricketing county and helps to make 252 runs in just over an hour. The 12,000 spectators who saw this spirited display of cricket fireworks dreamed that it might be like this one day in a test match. The Highbury ground hadn't discarded its signs of football, and when Ted Drake appeared at the wicket wearing his Arsenal jersey with his centre-forward number prominently displayed, it was too much for the other Arsenal boys. And with the soccer season about to open, they decided that a little practice shooting would fit the occasion too. Aboard the Stratheden, the MCC team reach Fremantle. Hutton and Compton hope they're both fit, and Skipper Brown.
We hope to attack these Australians from the word go. I think the team is 100% fit, but of course we have the doubt of Dennis Compton and his knee, and perhaps we'll get from Dennis what it's like. Come on, Dennis. Well, how is it, Dennis?
Well, I'm very fit indeed at the moment, Mr. Brown, and I'm sure my knee's going to stand up very well to this trip.
Good. Well, we hope so, Dennis. Well, we're off now, and I hope very much that we're going to bring back the Ashes. So I'll say goodbye, and I hope in May that we can come back with them.
And away they go, carrying with them all our very best wishes for good luck and complete success for the tour and the tests.
Another English cricketer made the voyage to Australia later, but in his case to stay permanently. Harold Larwood.
When the Orion recently berthed at Sydney, she brought a famous English cricketer back to Australia, Harold Larwood. With his wife and 5 daughters, he plans to settle in the country that once booed him whenever he bowled. He was one of the greatest fast bowlers England ever produced, and these old films, taken during the 1932 tour, recall the empire-shattering cricket controversy of that time. He certainly had a wonderful action, hadn't he? Not even Bradman could deal with him, and my hat, Larwood could make the stumps fly.
How ironic that the country he helped to victory quickly abandoned him, and the country he ground to defeat finally welcomed him.
Now he's been welcomed to Australia by Jack Fingleton, former Test opponent, and a bit camera shy apparently.
You're going to do some newspaper work and broadcasting work, aren't you? That's been decided.
Yes, and this time I'm sitting on the fence, Jack.
Outside the fence, not on the fence. Outside, that's the best part to sit on.
You know, I've never seen a test match yet.
When the Australians came out to field on what proved to be the last day of the final test, the Oval was crowded with spectators hoping to see May and Edrich stay till 132 was on the ball. May indeed was in first-class form. Slowly but surely the score mounted. It was by no means going. The Aussies certainly weren't handing those Ashes back on a plate after 20 years. Then, near the end, Hassett put himself on to bowl. Morris bowled from the other end, and here it comes. A 4 by Compton wins the match, the rubber, and the Ashes.
And so, after 20 long years since that notorious bodyline bowling series, the Ashes returned to England, and appropriately in Coronation Year.
Speeches were called for, and first Hutton obliged.
I must say how happy and thrilled I feel about it all today. And to happen here at the Oval, which of course has always been a very happy hunting ground for me.
Then it was Lindsay Hassett's turn.
I would just like to offer my congratulations to Len and to all of the English team. There's no doubt about this victory. They earned it right from the very first ball to the second last over anyway. We'll be waiting for you in Australia in a couple of years' time. And I hope anyway, when whoever wins out there, that the cricket will be just as enjoyable and the result just as close as this series. Thank you very much.
It was indeed a famous English victory. Here are the men who won it, not forgetting the Ashes they got back. The last time we saw the famous batsman Jack Hobbs on the cricket field was when he umpired at the Oval in the match Surrey versus Old England. The late King George VI attended the match and had a long talk with him and some great contemporaries. Now Jack Hobbs has celebrated his 70th birthday. Good luck to him. May he go on to score yet another century.
Dennis Compton, acting as umpire at a charity match at East Mosey, couldn't resist handling a bat to see how his knee was getting on. Oh dear, still looks a bit groggy, doesn't it?
Dennis Charles Scott Compton's CBE was one of the last of the pre-war greats to reach the end years of this century. One critic described him as one of the great instinctive cricketers of all time and the cheekiest batsman I ever saw. Some of that cheek shone out from his famous hair cream adverts. His death saddened cricket lovers everywhere.
Dennis, obviously unfit at the moment, said he hoped to be back in first-class cricket before long. The match was between East Molesey and London's Albany Club, and brighter cricket was a feature. Leary Constantine had Olympic sprinter MacDonald Bailey to run for him, so his temptation to go for short ones must have been greater than ever. But of course, boundaries, as usual, were Leary's chief aim. He was eventually caught at 99 when trying to complete his century with another mighty crack.
When Northants took the field in their match with Leicestershire at Northampton, Frank Typhoon Tyson was last but by no means least to come out. The rain-affected pitch was no help to his pace here, and at the opening of a new cricket season, it's interesting to speculate on whether he'll repeat his Australian form. Slow-motion studies of his action and his shortened run reveal the concentration and the rhythm that brought him 28 test wickets for an average of just over 20. His spell of 6 for 16 at Melbourne was typical of his devastating attack that did so much to win the series and retain the Ashes.
Soon after the war, cricket was given an extra shot in the arm by the teams of the West Indies and their exuberant supporters. These Caribbean islands produced more than their share of cricket's greatest players. Viv Richards, the W Quartet, Worrell, Weeks, Walcott and Wardle, and the great Garfield Sobers. Sobers was to go on to score 365 not out in this, the third test against Pakistan at Kingston, Jamaica in 1958, surpassing Hutton's world record test innings of 364 for England at the Oval in 1938. The enthusiastic West Indian crowd invaded the field after their side declared and made the pitch unplayable for the final hour of that day's cricket.
Leaving Buckingham Palace after the investiture, Sir Leonard Hutton, seen with his wife and his 2 sons, had just received the accolade from Her Majesty. Knighted for his services to cricket, Sir Len, whether as a performer at the wicket or as the leader of English 11s, has long been one of the most popular of sportsmen.
Cowdrey sent the Aussies out to field after winning the toss yet again. But England's openers, Puller and Sabaro, scarcely expected the lively wicket they found. Davidson to Sabaro, who stayed for nearly 2 hours. 40 minutes for 11 was Puller's achievement. Davidson to Dexter, and a nasty blow over the heart. A lively pitch indeed. Mackay to Sabaro, LBW, but top scorer at 48. Then Misson got Dexter for 27, caught Mackenzie. Of course, there was always Cowdrey, who'd scored 2 centuries for Kent against the Aussies. And Peter May was back, but only to make 17. Mackenzie to Cowdrey, and he's caught wicket for 16. Surely it must be the wicket. Look what happened to Illingworth. He'd been over an hour for 13 when Misson bowled him. Pull your socks up, England. Second day highlights. A Truman bumper to Harvey. It was the Aussies' turn to cope with that pitch now. Harvey gets one and threatens to retaliate. O'Neill failed to shine on this occasion.
Dexter clean bowled him for 1. An interesting phase with a fine weather start.
The last day of the 5th test, and Statham to can high. He went on to score 77. The Oval has seen many dramas, but there have been few to equal this triumph by the West Indies. Conrad Hunt was the kingpin of their last innings. A magnificent century, and he stayed to the finish with a score of 108 not out. .255 for 2, and joy becomes jubilation. The Oval can never have known a scene like this. Victory in the series by 3 matches to 1 confirmed the West Indies as the most powerful side in the world. And it marked the climax of a tour of truly great cricket. For that, we all offer a hearty vote of thanks to the players and their 2 captains, Frank Worrell and Ted Dexter. As Australia took the field for the 5th and final test at the Oval, England still stood a chance of squaring the series, even though the Ashes had gone up in smoke. Mackenzie to Boycott. Jeff Boycott was to get 30, the second highest score of an uninspiring innings that was almost as dismal as the light. Calling to Boycott. Ted Dexter was to suffer a pretty rare and disturbing experience off the Demon Hawk. His bat broke in half, split at the splice. Hawk was later to add insult to injury, dismissing Dexter for 23, caught Boo. Hawk started the rout by removing Boycott's middle stump. Hawk was to get 6 of our wickets for 47, a test match best. The Oval saw the return of the old brigade, but Colin Cowdrey was nearly caught first ball. Incidentally, Cowdrey only needed 71 to join the 6 batsmen who've made over 5,000 runs in test matches. His first innings was a mere 20. Ken Barrington wanted 113 to beat Dennis Compton's record for a home series against Australia. He got 47 of them on the first day. Now Mackenzie to Truman, the other member of the old brigade. If he could get 39 runs and only 3 wickets, he'd be the first with 300 wickets and 1,000 runs in Test cricket. But when the Hawk is swooping, runs are hard to get. He only managed 14 in his first innings. Better luck with the bowling, Fred. Lords, the scene of so many serious clashes over the years, is the setting for a pleasantly light-hearted game. The Lord's Taverners 11 against an old England side in a special charity match. Dressed as for the late 1800s, the Lord's Taverners take the field. In the lineup is David Frost, Peter Richardson, and that veteran of the crease, Harry Seacombe. Opening bats for Old England, Reg Simpson and Jack Aiken. Play also followed the rules of 1800, 4 balls to an over, and a 6 scored only if the ball is right out of the stadium. Bernard Cribbins and John Slater posed for charity photographs. Old England notch up an impressive 249 for 8 declared. Ray Barrett and Patrick O'Rourke. In 1884, the date chosen for this period match, there were some very funny rules. The bowler, for example, could deliver the ball either over or underarm. But now it's the Lord's Taverners to bat. 249 to beat, and there's Brian Ricks.
Harry Seacombe looks almost dangerously confident. And another 4 to Seacombe. Hey, that second batch was surely against the rules even in 1884. But eventually they called the whole thing a draw anyway. As the fruits of a hard day's cricket, a cheque for £500 was presented to the National Playing Fields Association.
Many things have changed since 1884, indeed over the centuries in which cricket's been played. The size of the bat, the wicket, the pitch, the laws of the game. In the last 20 or 30 years alone, the ways in which the players dress, the way the game's presented on the field or through broadcasting. The face of cricket has changed almost beyond recognition for those whose heyday was the period we've shown. But that's another story.